Hello everybody, and welcome to the LJL officially unofficial cast coverage of week 1, game 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the LJL. I am your host, Alex, otherwise known as go by Mars1 on the internet, and of course I'm joined by the Good Brother duo. Let's start off with the color caster. That's Alex, otherwise known as Nightmare Habgood. He is my remarkable color caster today. And of course, I can't go without saying, I obviously have the delightful Sam, otherwise known as Initialize Habgood, our play-by-play caster. Gentlemen, as I say always, introduce yourselves.
I'll jump in first this time. It is a pleasure to be back for kind of the first games of the LJL split, but not really for us. We've got some inverted schedules, but I'm really excited to be back and casting a couple teams which we haven't seen in a few weeks. CGA, V3, some of these topper ranked teams looking to start off strong for summer.
And this is day 2 of our series versus time zones. This is it. This is our best of 5 or whatever it is across the split. It's a best of many different things. We're going to be trying different iterations of how we get the best content to you. Today we've got these games for you, split up as 4, and I'm looking forward to them.
Yeah, so we did coverage live over, well, yesterday actually, live during the Sengoku series against Rascal Jester, and then following that we did cover the remainder 4 games. But we'll be covering the first 4 games, so let me run everybody through those. First off, we're going to be having AXIZ face off against Crest Gaming Act. Following that one, we'll be bringing you coverage of V3 Esports facing off against AXIZ. Then we'll have Crest Gaming Act backed, but this time to face off against Burning Core. And to round us off, it's going to be Burning Core facing off against V3 Esports. Gentlemen, that first game we've got is going to be CGA versus AXIZ. And what a game to actually begin us. 2 very polarizing teams, 2 very different teams in the LJL from how they approach the game in multiple different ways. What's your thoughts and expectations moving into this one, first off?
So the last time we saw these guys was obviously back in regular season. They didn't play anything in playoffs against each other, and AXIZ had that unfortunate early AXIZ exit versus V3 is far too early for me. This is unfortunately a losing team fight versus the time zones. So AXIZ coming in with some unforeseen changes. They've had to shift Earnion down to the bot lane. Natsume and you guys had to come in. And CGA have actually decided to go for a double rotating jungle system. So they've got Unica in today instead of Yoshi. So both of these teams have something to prove coming off of their playoff runs. One team will be more happy than the others.
Yep.
Got to see how they're coming in with these new members.
I kind of do want to drop in on that, though, because it's worth pointing out that CGA's changes are planned. They've been training for this. This is not, as far as we know, planned for AXIZ. They've got members who are stuck out in Korea with the COVID stuff and transport being a little tricky at the moment. And that's definitely going to be a difficult situation for AXIZ. We know them as a team that is greater than the sum of their parts. When you remove some of those parts, maybe that chemistry gets a bit affected.
Yeah, it could definitely get affected, and maybe we might be seeing something that, as we are a blast from the past, similar to Rascal Jesters, potentially, as could make things a little bit more awkward, as not having that cohesive unit that you have done religious practicing with. Well, it feels a little bit anticlimactic coming into week 1, but these things do happen. Gentlemen, obviously, I think it's rather clear for me to think where you're both leaning on your teams that are going to win, but I do have to ask that question nonetheless. Who's winning this game?
For me, it's CGA. I think that they had a stellar playoffs run. They did, unfortunately, lose out to V3, but it was a close 3-2. They competed all the way versus Rascal Jester as well. I think that they don't necessarily care as much about the roster change compared to AXIZ. I think this, as Sam was saying, it will affect them slightly less. I think they're less about their cohesive synergy. I think they're more about star power and crazy moments, and a roster change won't really impact that. AXIZ, I'm a little bit more worried for.
Okay.
Yeah. Second verse, same with the first. I think CGA should have a pretty clear advantage here. They're shifting out one of their weaker members. Yoshi definitely stepped up in playoffs, but we knew him in the regular season to be a little bit more suspect. And bringing in new blood there could well be actually an upgrade, and we don't know. But I think it will be less of an effect.
That's fair. That's fair. Where Do we, though, expect this game to really be broken in? Where is the matchup that we're looking forward to seeing in this match, gentlemen? I would have to ask that question before we transition over into our game.
It depends whether you want it to be a close matchup to talk about or one which is going to be really lopsided. Because I think mid lane could potentially be quite close, and it'll be really fun, and I love both these mid laners. Bot lane, not so much.
Yeah, no, actually, that's pretty much a really good spot. Shouty's spot. I was going to say something. I mean, if you wanted to think about somewhere else to look, perhaps it'd be interesting to keep an eye on Unica, who's new in the jungle, versus Hoglet, who's been one of our better junglers. But I think I agree. I think the mid and the bot lane will be kind of spicier roles to keep an eye on.
Well, you heard it here, folks. That's where we're going to have a bit of expectation. CGA, the overwhelming favorite going into this one, according to us. And I mean, I can't say no more. Gentlemen, we're playing. Game's already about to start the pick and ban phase. Good luck to both these teams. And gentlemen, enjoy casting this one.
Thank you, Lexi.
So good to be back and casting. This time for the kind of game 1 of the LJL, our game 5 here on the Unofficial. We've got a few bans coming through. Before we get to that, we've got a few team rosters to get through. It will be Crest Gaming Act on the blue side this time out, and that means it'll be Nap in the top lane, New Blood, Unica in the jungle, it'll be Arya in the mid lane, and of course Gango and Grendel will be holding down the bot lane.
And for the first time this split, it will be AXIZ, and they'll be on the red side. It's Natsume, their own New Blood in the top lane, Hoglet in the jungle, Gadiadu, that gorilla in the mid lane, and Eunyan making his debut as ADC alongside Corporal in the bot lane.
Some intriguing rosters, that's for sure. Bans coming out of CJ are not unexpected. Senna's pretty strong. Graves has been a monster. Aphelios taken off the board as well. And similar for AXIZ, ADC focus again. I'm aware that Graves is a jungler, but he's a marksman in his own way, and Varus and Ezreal will be there.
Okay.
Bans out.
So Syndra, not been banned. Kalista, I was really wanting to see that banned in our games that we covered yesterday. I think that Gango is the Kalista player in the LJL, although it has been said that Eunyan has played that too. So maybe that's a takeaway from AXIZ. This leaves Set open. It leaves Ornn open. Nidalee there as well. I know that CJ have played around that pick as well, although they don't have something like the Nidalee. And actually, Syndra will be first locked in. And forgive me if I'm wrong, I don't think we saw Arya on this pick at all last split. Well, I don't think Arya had a Syndra game last split.
Yeah, the Dark Sovereign, our Lord Arya, both playing Syndra, and I think potentially his first time on that champion.
It could also be this. It's a flex pick.
Yeah, it is a flex pick, of course. No, Gango would be somebody to pull out that. I'm sure he feels that kind of crazy gut man. Though Natsume looking like he'll be going towards Renekton, and perhaps a response to the AD carry here. Mr. Fortune's one of those, probably is the last upper tier marksman still on the board.
I'm trying to think about that. I guess you could pick someone like Zaya Khan at this point.
Yeah,
given
that
the
would make some
amount
sense.
of AD carry bans. Senna, we didn't see it banned so much yesterday. It was, of course, picked by DFM.
Yes, it was.
But I'm not sure it was banned in any of the other games. But it's interesting to say CGA just saying, look, we don't particularly want to play around that. Or first pick it. Gango has been one of the better Senna players in this region as well. Set made it through the first 2 rounds of picking. I'm just kind of surprised by that
because he feels like he can do pretty well in pretty much every role but ADC. Yeah, and he's still in the bot lane as a good support. So
winning isn't everything. Winning is the only thing. So says Set. CJ locks that in second after their Syndra. Can pretty much go anywhere.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And
go on. Yes.
And while we were talking about AD carries, we talked about Misfortune. We talked about all of the banned champions. We talked about, Zaya Khan's a thing. Gango's a Draven player.
Buddy.
Gango is a Draven player. Gango beat SKT playing Draven in a regular split in the LCK.
Man
He's locked it in. And we saw him play this last split, and he tore up Burning Core in that one game.
And you could see AXIZ wind down the time on picking the thresh there, just giving themselves a little bit of a response. Eunyan, welcome to bot lane, my friend.
Oh, no.
Let me introduce you to...
No, don't
let me introduce you to Gango's Draven. That's a way to debut in the bot lane, isn't it?
Allow us to introduce ourselves. Okay, so we're coming through into the second round of bans. You know, I was saying, I didn't think Arya played Syndra last split. It's more than that. Arya has never played a professional game on Syndra. And with the Gango locked in, with the Gango the Draven locked in, this is more than likely going to be Syndra mid lane. This could be the first time we have seen Aria on Syndra.
And that feels kind of insane considering how dominant Syndra has been over the last few years, at least in terms of being blind pickable, having a lot of options to her kit, the stun, the unleashed power. You know, there's so much there. So I'm excited to see Arya on this pick, and just got to ask, what's taken so long?
That's a very good question. We've seen plenty of mid laners across the world do some crazy things on those picks. It's very interesting to me that LeBlanc has not been picked or banned so far. Gadiadu and Arya are very, very good at that champion. I think now Gadiadu probably won't want to take the LeBlanc. Syndra is one of the better matchups there. Zoe is still available. That's one of the matchups which can be very good.
The
at
Echo
Syndra.
is taken out.
Echo's been taken out as well. That's although that is also a flex pick between jungle and mid as well. So looks like AXIZ are at least considering that. So I do think that would be the preferential mage matchup. LeBlanc, it's dangerous, but I love both these mid laners. I think they both have the ability to pull off this matchup. Arya had a stunning split in spring. And so did Gadiadu, but he also didn't manage to make it stick in playoffs. Now we've got a Syndra versus LeBlanc.
Oh, there we go.
And a Wukong on the top lane.
Wukong's been a little bit hit and miss here in the LJL. We've seen the likes of Ebby pick it up and feel a little bit off. We've kind of seen that Wukong isn't the best laning pick. He needs to hit his item breakpoints before he's genuinely terrifying.
And even Ebby was, even though he managed to pick up a couple of solo kills in lane, he was losing pressure in the laning phase. And he was losing plates in the laning phase. And that can mean that when you're playing around a jungle like the set jungler looks like, and you're against a Kindred, you're going to have to play around losing priority.
Yep. Losing priority is the way of putting it. I doubt that's a Misfortune jungle. I suspect that's the Kindred. And there's the switch.
Roll, swap, roll, swap.
And of course, Kindred is another one of those junglers that's been getting a lot of priority. It's another one of those farming carry junglers up there with the Graves, the Nidalees. Kind of curious to see what Hoglet does on this pick. Unica, though, will be starting off on the set. I know you have your own thoughts about set jungle, just in terms of the LEC when we've been on that when we've been watching that broadcast has been a little bit down on Set's early ganking pressure at times, and you tend to think a little differently.
I think that Set ganks very well at level 3. If you think about Gragas, one of the champions we do call one of the better gankers in the current meta, and alongside stuff like Jarvan and Lee Sin or whatever, he needs level 3. So does Set. Set gets Knuckle Down, he gets all of his basic abilities, he runs forward, and he can flash Facebreaker. You think, oh, well, he has to commit flash to a gank. Well, Gragas also needs to do that as well. Set, very hard to take out in one of these ganks as well, because of the Haymaker, unless he's taking large amounts of turret shots, which we have seen occasionally from that champion. I think that particularly into a matchup like LeBlanc, if she ever misuses her W, you can just flash forward and force a flash, or take take that stun as well, stunning against the minion wave. So yeah, I think Set has a lot of options in the early game. We saw Steel play it in the semifinals versus V3, I think it was.
Yes, it was the one game they lost, but he looked pretty good on it. I think is the way to phrase it.
Yeah, and he was forcing flashes all over the place and keeping people accountable. So I think that Set jungle pretty good. And the other thing
scales so well.
The thing for me about Set jungle is that it's really hard to remove. When you think about so much of the current meta in terms of these big fights which kind of lead into objectives, a lot of the time the deciding factor is, well, did we kill the jungler? If you kill the support, it's like, okay, all right, let's just reset. Let's just get some vision. If you kill the jungler, green light's been given.
Yeah, and that green light is so much harder to get versus Set. He's got his passive, which restores his HP. He's got the grip, which allows him to shield out of a lot of stuff. He can just run away. His kit is full of CC.
And Phase Rush allows him to run very quickly.
He runs real damn fast. Like his kit especially with kit and runes specifically, Phase Rush, Knuckle Down, Nimbus Cloak. Like the list goes on in ways to give Set as much speed as possible. Throw a Dead Man's Plate in there, why don't you?
Yeah, well, that's your first item after you send a Hulk. It gives you a large amount of utility, gives you that first bonk as well. You have true damage in your kit, which means you don't have to necessarily run something like a Conqueror as well.
I realize he was a music fan. He's into his grime, is he? That's interesting.
What?
He's with true damage.
Oh.
Producer's just telling us he hates me, but that's fine. You guys have to suffer with me for at least one game.
It's not a unique feeling, so.
Unique feeling? Oh, it keeps coming. It keeps coming. Well, my color caster is dead, so while he recovers from my glorious punning,
I quit.
Okay, well maybe instead I will solo cast this because the color caster has decided he's done.
Oh, that was painful. So we're still kind of in the middle of this pause now. That's why we got...
I love it. We just move on. Like,
move
not
on
even...
to better things, greener pastures. Looks like there are some patch notes up on screen.
Yeah.
Worth noting that the Syndra pick for Ardia, first pick for Ardia, had some nerfs in this last patch in 10.11. So Syndra's E is up by 2 seconds on the cooldown at each rank. So it's gone from, so it used to be 16 down to 12 seconds, now it's 18 down to 14. One of the things about Syndra is that a lot of her trades start off with that E. So it just means that every trade Syndra does takes 2 seconds longer to kind of set up between those kind of opportunities. So that window where you can punish Syndra is slightly more open. In the team fights, maybe you don't have that second stun coming through in that important part of that team fight. It's a meaningful nerf. It's definitely one of the ones which could have affected her more without necessarily stopping her individual playmaking potential when you're using all of your skills at the same time.
That's just it. And Syndra missing stun, particularly when she's getting ganked, has always been a bit of a problem for her. This makes it all that much worse, especially around those team fights, as you were calling out. And I suppose as far as champions, or at least players, rather, who would be piloting a Syndra, who I believe could play around it, I suspect Ari's got to be up there.
For sure. No, this guy's... maybe the best mechanical player in the LJL. We have seen him pull off some ridiculous stunts, frankly. He's been building Magi's in professional games and getting away with it. Sometimes not always getting away with it. So we do continually reference back to their second matchup versus Rascal Jester in the regular season. It was kind of nasty there. He was on the Silas, he gets the 25 Magi stacks and then dies in one tier fight, and this team just loses because he was
sad.
And that's kind of been the problem for CJ. Sometimes it has felt like Ardia or bust. We had at the start of Spring Split, Gango was playing very well, and towards the end of the split he started picking up again, but we need to see a bit more cohesiveness, a bit more of sharing that brunt, shouldering it on someone else for a bit.
Well, speaking of sharing the brunt, we'll have to see whether they can do that as they stand on Summoner's Rift. We're already out on to that map, and we're looking at a line of scrimmage across both teams. Not seeing too much crazy stuff, Natsumeh, with the strong emote game. Demacian Silverwing looking pretty sad right there.
And that brings us the important question of the Little Legends meta.
Yes.
I'm still firmly on the Hushtail.
I'm with you on the Hushtail.
Hushtails are adorable. They have that emote where they just
I don't
roll
actually
around.
have a Hushtail yet. I'm really sad.
I have the Mystery Hushtail.
I didn't actually get that. I've just don't know which to roll one. It's been really sad.
It's I mean, I kind of like River Sprite as well. Just like little blob guy.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Dancing blob.
And also you get to just kind of flex on people like, I don't need a Little Legend.
I have the pebble thing, but it's got like a flower. It's really adorable. Around with a little flower. And just a little head bob.
The
rune sprite, whatever it is. Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay, so level 1, we have a Nautilus is checking into this blue buff start from AXIZ. Nautilus being one of the stronger level 1 champions, potentially able to upset something there, but in a 2v3 situation, even Grendel would not have the courage to do so. Unicorn can do a leashless start on the bot side.
Yes, he is. Of course, as said, he can wander away and heal up pretty fast. He does use his 2-punching system pretty well to take down things quite fast. Also worth pointing out, Gango running that hail of blades.
He is does allow for that huge quick trade potential. When you've got those axes, you get that extra damage on every auto attack. Gives you basically extra AD ratio on your autos.
That just sounds horrendous.
Building a BF sword is really nasty. So Twitter vote went 53% to CGA. AI vote goes 53% to AXIZ. So the crowd is split.
That's curiouser and curiouser. That's a hook in, though. And Grendel, Gango, hit level 2, force a flash out of Corporal. That is rough.
As a heal as well out of Earnyan. Level 2 reached by the bot lane of CGA and punish AXIZ accordingly.
That is what we were afraid of. Turns out Gango on Draven is pretty monstrous. He just plays lane, not to win, but to traumatize. To quote
yes,
G2
the G2
lane.
A
little bit apocryphally. That is what Draven's supposed to do. He's there to traumatize.
And with that Halo Blade as well. Okay, speaking of traumatizing and laning phase, it's going to be this mid lane. And actually, I don't know why that's traumatizing. Good trade from Aria, though. Landing the W into the E into the Q as well. Good trade there. Proccing the phase rush and turning around what looked to be a good trade from the LeBlanc just as we flicked over to that lane.
Unica's going for an invade, but he's going to find a very empty blue side of the jungle. Kindred's already cleaned it up. she's going to find, well, they rather are going to find their way over to Krugs and then look down towards Scuttle Crab. Unfortunate luck of the draw, though, the mark spawned on the bottom Scuttle Crab.
I don't know if that's luck of the draw. I wonder if that's CJ saying, hey, there's a mark spawned here. We don't want we don't want Kindred getting those early marks. Once Kindred gets up to that 4-mark place, when you're dealing with, Nautilus, Set, and Wukong, 3 melee champions, that's a good stun there, cancelling out the distortion from Gadiaru. And
Chains are in. This is a deliberate trade coming in behind because Hoglet is here. Arya pushed up quite a long way, has got a lot of speed though. Phase Rush is a wonderful rune.
I am the fast.
I am the fast. And Gadiaru is the I am the low. Had very, very little of his health bar left there.
And all corrupting potions have been used from both mid laners. It's going to be a reset from both of them. I don't know if it's going to be a teleport in from the LeBlanc, but it will be Syndra walking back to the lane on foot. No teleport taken, has taken the cleanse, does mean that the chain setup, slightly less impactful. Hook misses from Grendel.
That was getting a little bit spicy there. Unico was in the bush as well, so if the hook landed, that will have been a bit of a flash in for the Set jungle.
And we talked about Set having flash ganks.
Yep.
Even if you don't have minions to get that stun on that face breaker, it's still good for the pushback, particularly if you cancel someone's movement ability as well. If you manage to cancel a distortion, for instance, or the slice and dice from the Renekton, you can get some really good ganks even without a minion wave.
And I know you kind of view Set in a sort of at least ganking early on in a similar way to Gragas, and that is a good chain, you're right. Just in the fact that flash gank you can pull off, shotgun gank is in a similar vein. The one distinction is there are a few more caveats for the Set.
For sure, so he doesn't have the
something on the other side of him to really get the hard CC.
Gadiaru just continued to land these chains.
He has been. He's got the level up as well onto Arya right now, but I suspect he'll pick up the level 5 off that wave. It's not the case in the bot lane, though.
Hoglet.
Draven is pushed up very far, but the Make It Rain is down. Hoglet's here. Gadiaru's roaming down. Grendel's not anywhere near at the minute. He's still up in the river. That's a flash out from Gango, but here comes Gadiaru in behind. That's going to be the chain check. That comes in for first blood. Grendel goes down as well for a second kill for this LeBlanc. And that bolshy, arrogant swagger that Gango was playing with, that Draven lanes play with, comes back to haunt them. Grendel was up and warding, and Hoglet and Garo just walk through the CGA jungle and come in behind them.
And Arya types in all chat, why are you feeding my lane? 2 kills over to LeBlanc, tilting that matchup. Not just tilting the matchup, going to give that Mountain Dragon over to the side of AXIZ as well, so that extra 6% resist will be there for the entire side of the red team. And CGA, and on particularly the bot lane, just were not on the same page and walked away from each other. Grendel not able to peel for Gango. Gango walks into Hoglet. Gadiaru's coming down as well. Don't know that Gadiaru's coming down, and he manages to get the wraparound after the flash has been used. No way out for the Draven.
Yeah, and just a little late on the mark switch over there for Kindred, by the way. Didn't quite come through in time, so there will be no additional mark picked up.
That's
for
important.
The kills.
That is important.
That is pretty important. Unica's going to head up to the Raptors and steal those away. Haymaker's actually really damn good, along with Facebreaker for clearing that camp out.
He actually has AoE clear.
And Lost Chapter pick up for LeBlanc. Means she gets to go back into lane and has just that extra bit of agency. Can play with her mana significantly more in lane as well.
However, the Syndra does have that level 6 as well. Kill pressure now there from both sides. No ignite taken by either person, and no electrocute from the Syndra means that the trades are probably less 1v1s, focused more about those team fights and skirmish oriented. And we go back to this kind of more stable laning phase. Blue buff handover to that LeBlanc will be sat there. Now on 20% CDR with that mana regen as well, and looking to see some more hard trading from Gadiaru in the mid lane.
And all said and done, that's led up to not quite 1,000 gold lead for AXIZ. It's more about 500-600 really by the time you count in waves and stuff that have been caught up. But that's a much better start for AXIZ than we kind of saw a lot of last split. They only had a 29% first blood rate last split. They only got they were quite slow, generally speaking. They were only finishing games with around an average of 36 minutes.
But they were very determined about how they finished the game. I would almost call them baby Sengoku in the way that they closed out their games. They have a very different drafting phase. I think they are their own unique team. They're their own blend of different styles. But that's kind of what I would put them towards. We see a Herald start from Nap, and we haven't talked about the top lane at all. This Wukong has been surviving just fine versus that Renekton.
Hoglet will be here, has got Lamb's Respite. Renekton
level
is
up,
up here for Natsume as well. See how this goes. Remember, there's going to be potentially a little bit of danger here. Hoglet goes in, gets the smite. That's huge. Can he get the Lamb's Respite down? Does he even damn well need it? That's a haymaker punch, though. Good lord, and Hoglet hops straight into his death. Does manage to pick up the Eye of the Herald, though, so I think that's probably a worthy trade.
He drops the ward, gets the Herald. He does manage to pick it up as well, so it will be that Herald take for AXIZ, and that will be now available to them. Unica finding it hard to find any inroads on this champion. He's not managed to play around top lane, not managed to get anything into any of these lanes. He's also behind in farm, but he did manage to deny at least some of these early spawned marks away from that Kindred, but that's basically the bare minimum in this matchup.
It is, and we do kind of have to be aware that this is a newer jungler who is against one of our better junglers, and thus far Hoglet has been playing really clean.
Yeah. And I'm gonna throw this out there. I don't mind that Hoglet didn't flash an ult there. I think that it's a pretty slim pickings in terms of ways you can survive. It means you have those tools available for big plays like a flash hook.
Corporal tried it. It forced the heal for the additional movement speed, but it didn't quite land. That was ambitious, but I appreciate the flair.
You are a bold one. He flashes forward, he misses the hook, he trades it for the heal of Gango with his Blood Rush as well, gets all of that movement speed and sidesteps very cleanly.
Yeah, apparently Grievous has been demoted to Corporal, but we'll have to deal with it.
Corporal Grievous.
Corporal Grievous.
And speaking of him, going to pop that sweeper, see the Nautilus in that bot lane. Corporal has been a excellent Thresh player. He doesn't have the best win rate on it because they kind of played that during their slumping early weeks of Spring Split LJL in this year. However, you know, I believe he's played Thresh versus Grendel's Nautilus before and played the laning phase. Yeah, and played the matchup very well. So I'm looking to see how he kind of plays that hook for hook trade, both of them activating Aftershock at the same time, having the Lantern free position, and all things about that.
Yeah, and that's the difference, right? Isn't it? It's that Corporal's Thresh has kind of passed the eye test.
Seamus.
Chain did miss. But yeah, it has passed the eye test, even if it hasn't always ended netting AXIZ the win.
This could be a 2v2 in the mid lane.
Off Vision, Hoglet is on it. That's potentially a bit scary. Level 9 for both mid laners. A level up for Hoglet, who gets stunned, gets abused, and absolutely obliterated there in the bush. Was on Vision.
And the flash forced away from Gallardo too. That is a horrible 2v2 for AXIZ.
Oh, man, they were going to see if they could play around the Rift Herald that was in inventory as well. That's just as the Ocean Drake spawns as well. And CGA clap back with a great fight in the mid lane.
Vision was not respected from AXIZ. That ward in the top side bush are River spotted out by Unica and Aria. The CC chain into death, no Lamb's Respite able to be channeled there, goes down cleanly. And it's the kill over to Aria, evening up that mid lane matchup again. Aria also has himself a CS lead, partly due to Gallardo's roaming, even with that teleport. Aria managing to now get to his points of power, and we'd be very ready to fight in these next couple of minutes.
But the Ocean Drake wasn't actually started by CGA. The AXIZ just walked straight back down and are going to start this up. And Hoglet going to get the objective here as well. So that'll be early Herald and 2 Drakes over to the side of AXIZ.
You just use Showstopper. You just use your Unleash power as well. You don't have all the tools really available to you. And also, it's worth noting, Gango is not going for a BF Sword first. He's not going for a Bloodthirster first. It's Mana Moon. It's that huge AD spike from that one item after it's completed. Herald will be summoned into the mid lane, but actually with Set and Syndra here. Stun lands again.
Nap's going to be here as well. That pulse of the Lamb's Respite out, but Hoglet has to flash out. And there goes the flash. Nimbus strike. Stylish plays from Nap, who picks up a second kill for himself. Well, Hoglet, it was all looking good from your map plays, but this has been a couple plays around the mid lane in a row that have been suspect.
And no one gets plays. The Herald summoned, it does get that ram off into that mid lane outer turret. Hook lands onto Gango, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Gango has got to flash out, and Corporal playing over this wall every time he plays Thresh against CGA. Did similar things to Grendel's Nautilus way back when they did the first time.
Absolutely. Go watch back to week 3, week 4 when Corporal first picked up the Thresh. Back in spring, he had a very similar combo onto Grendel's Nautilus and gets a one-shot over a wall due to a good hook into box combo. Anyway, as I was saying, that mid lane 2v2 was disastrous for AXIZ. They used their opportunistic advantage that they'd found in that Herald poorly. They didn't manage to get any plates out of it. They lost a kill. They lost flashes. They lost ultimates on their mid lane 2v2. And once again, it's a kill onto Nap. That Wukong is doing very well in this top lane.
Yeah, and a Wukong that's doing well on just items is a very different beast to a Wukong that is kind of getting shoved in and being kind of run around by his opponent's top laner. He's only down about 10 CS, which is kind of fine for Wukong in lane at this point, especially versus something with his early pressure as a Renekton. So I'm pretty pleased with how Nap's been playing this.
And moving on to another member of CGA, Unica. We need to talk about him a little bit. He's still down in farm. He's managed to keep up in levels now. I have liked how he's linked up with Ardia thus far. He's kind of been following Ardia's lead, waiting for the CC to land, waiting for it to be a real sitter. Nap's going to run into Hoglet, though, the other jungler, which we've not talked about just yet.
Yeah, forces the clone out. Hoglet's only got the one mark thus far as well at 14.
But it's on the Grump. You can potentially get that.
Potentially, but he's gone over towards the blue buff. Isn't going to start up that, but with 3 members of AXIZ here, I think he should hopefully have time for this. But look when that Unica is just coming around the corner. And actually, Hoglet isn't supported by his team to go for that Gromp. I actually wonder whether, I know blue buff is important, but I suspect that.
I think it's because Galliardo had 0 mana and Herald is spawning, it's spawned right now. So this gives you that point of power for this LeBlanc with the 2 kills to play around. Has the Merc Treads maybe able to burst out someone like the Ardia?
Oh, misses the chain again. That's unfortunate.
Dodges out in the queue, though.
It'll be a Dirk in for Gango as well. He is going for a lethality build here with that Hail of Blades. Absolutely looking to shred through a largely non-armor stacking carry members of AXIZ. Yes, the Renekton will probably get towards some armor. He's got the Ninja Tabi in. But it's a Kindred, a LeBlanc, and of course the Misfortune, who are going to be significantly less tanky.
And we are waiting for the storm to break. You can see the clouds in the distance there, but looks like actually AXIZ will be circumventing this inclement weather, pushing down into the mid lane instead. If a Herald's going to get you a Herald to get a tower, why don't you just take the tower? Ardia will be here for the wave clear, though. They don't finish off the tower. Wave clear is coming through from the Syndra. Chainlands onto Grendel. Not going to lead to much, though.
No, it is not. Grendel doesn't turn around on that one. Natsme is still in this top side, but it would be a 1 versus 5. Can't say that would be a great option for him, and we can see that Unyan has headed towards that bot lane tier 1 to clear out the wave.
Has flash, might go for a play here onto the Syndra, waiting under turret. Cleanse and flash available from Ardia, though.
Yeah, decide against it, and Gango is going to be there with Unica to pick up the second Herald of the game, and they're going to immediately head to this top lane.
So no plates now.
No, but first turret is still available.
That it is. So, speaking of first turret, Unyan going to be pushing down into that bot lane on the Misfortune. Haven't actually managed to talk about him too much, which in itself is pretty okay. He's managed to survive laning phase versus Gango's Draven. To a certain extent. He's managing to keep up in farm. He's getting to the right places on the map. Hopefully, be able to put across those bullet times in the team fights and do what all Misfortunes do and be that team fight presence.
Was not what all turret plates do, though, because while CGA got more turret plates there, they clearly weren't in range for some of them and only got 1 turret plate's worth of gold. As you can see, the gold per player here, it's actually up for Nap, which is a terrifying thing for a Wukong. It's a little bit of a lead for the likes of the Kindred. But, of course, Arya has found himself about a 300 gold lead as well.
Of course he has. It's kind of a small lead, though, given that Galliardo did manage to impact that bot lane and keep things from kind of going completely pear-shaped. Herald now summoned in the mid lane with a couple of autos. Yeah, this will probably take down the first turret. First turret goes over to Ardia.
It does. Actually, interestingly, it was claimed, of course, by Unica because he owned the Rift Herald, and therefore his pet gets him all the gold for that one, which is just the way that one is.
Well, there were no plates, he shares the gold with it. Galliardo now just hop that sweeper around that bot lane tri-brush, giving himself extra angles to play with on LeBlanc, Distorting Force. Has the Ludens completed, as does the Syndra, but there's also Sork Boots compared to the Merc Tread. So that Syndra will probably have that extra one-shot potential onto someone like the Kindred or the Misfortune compared to the LeBlanc onto the Draven, for instance.
That's exactly right.
Walking
forward. There's no one there. There is no Kalista. There is a stopwatch, though. Gango's coming up, and Nap is coming up as well. That bullet time does not a lot because of the flash. Unica is in the backline. Can't find the Soul until now. And that's pretty good, but Hoglet does manage to get down the Lamb's Respite, and now there is a lot of people caught within that zone. Galliardo does get the kill onto the set. Natsme is having to slice and dice his way up, but Nap is still really damn strong, does go down. It is a 2 for 2, I believe, thus far. 3 for 2, because at the end of that, there is a shutdown onto the Wukong. Arya and Gango with the 2 alive. And we see what these two do alone before. Gariaharu has to distort himself away and does survive. Looked like a pretty terrifying exchange that could have come through from the Draven and the Syndra.
A timely lantern there from Corporal saving his mid laner. This will leave after that chunk comes through. CGA's 2 carries to potentially start up the dragon. They won't choose to go for that, wait for their junglers to respawn. Gango will clear up bot lane. And this is kind of what we expect of CGA. Messy fights started by Grendel walking into the middle of nowhere. He has no one within about half a screen to a full screen of him. He has the stopwatch, he has flash. That's okay. It's not actually the worst start to a fight ever, but it's the risk that comes with it. It means that you don't get to put your depth charge into the opportune kind of place here. The showstopper used before this, the Kindred ult comes down, I would question that. It means that, again, the revive, well, not the revive, but that kind of that extra, that bulwark, which stops you from going below 10% HP, wasn't able to be denied from someone important. It means that Unica went down in a 3-for-2 nonetheless. And even though that happened, at least it wasn't a complete capitulation by CGA. They didn't lose the dragon as well, at least.
It was a 3-for-2 in AXIZ, and that's exactly right. CGA did pick up the 3rd Drake of the game, and that breaks AXIZ stacking of those dragons, and Infernal Drakes are ones you really want to get a hold of anyway.
For sure. And AXIZ, having both those 2 early dragons in the mountain and the ocean, will really want to start stacking those dragons. Getting that Infernal Soul, because it is that Infernal Rift, it is definitely a win condition.
And speaking of win conditions, where are we at with those at the minute? Where are you feeling with both squads? Here at 5-5, here with the gold, only 500 apart. It's 1 turret lead for CGA, it's 1 dragon lead for AXIZ. Game's pretty damn close. Where are you seeing the next 5-10 minutes playing out?
I'm seeing Nap revolving the map around him. He just distorts it right now with 3 kills, a Triforce completed, and the Tiamat. We saw what he did in that team fight. Very, very strong. As is Syndra, building up towards that Death Cap second, it looks like, with Auto Spellbinder, of course, with that needlessly large rod in inventory. Solo lanes for CGA really pulling their weight, and it's going to be all too soon that Gango will be stacking up towards that Muramana as well, because he did complete that as the first item.
That's absolutely true. Top lane turret did go down there. Nap's going to trade in the bot, and we saw, I think, Kindred finally pick up a mark on the Gromp there.
Right.
So congratulations for Hoglet. I didn't see whether he picked up too many in that fight. He did pick up at least one, so he's now on to 3 marks.
And, I mean, speaking of Hoglet, 2 levels up, 50 CS up, not the best KDA, but he's still doing fine in terms of that gold income.
Yeah, he's doing absolutely fine for that, and that's a big deal. It's just kind of a bit of a point that he hasn't hit that 4 mark breakpoint. That's the one thing that's kind of making Kindred feel a little bit risky.
At 3, which is not the worst thing ever.
It isn't. It is like, it's just a way, like, way back with, say, Zyrene when he was casting, he used to hold Kindred to 4 marks at 18 as your gold standard. Okay. That's what you're aiming for.
So at 20 minutes or 21, verging on that now with 3, it's kind of silver to bronze. It's still on the podium. It's still worthy of saying, okay, well, at least he's got a couple there, but it's not there, you know. Bridesmaid, not the bride.
That's exactly it. We've seen the AI bot there is dropped % up to CGA, considering where the game is at. And I can't say I disagree right now. It's about 100 gold lead, and that's pretty much it. And there is nothing else around this. Hoglet does have to be a little careful here. He's wandering in by himself. No one else around, and Nap could just go in on him here.
He's used the Dance of Arrows.
Oh, he's going to be able to get out over that. But he's got, of course, the empowered cooldown from, of course, having Wolf's Frenzy active there. Manages to Dance of Arrows away to the Blast Plant, having used it pretty swiftly again. After about a 2-second cooldown at this point.
What I find very interesting is that AXIZ have elected to... Oh, stun landing from Iris. So much damage. Natsume, worth mentioning. Of course, we haven't talked about him too much as well.
Yeah.
As a debut match, it's pretty good.
He's done fine.
1-on-1. That first team fight in that bottom river. Managed to have a slick combo with a flash slice and dice. Gets a kill. Doesn't get out, unfortunately. Does get absolutely mashed by Ara in that fight. But he's doing absolutely fine. As far as the debut goes, stable performance. Especially versus one of the stalwarts of the region, Nap.
Yeah. Speaking of Nap, though, the stalwart performance may not be enough to keep this Wukong down, though, who has got himself to a Trinity Force, has got himself a Tiamat, is building towards a Death Dance, has 3 kills, as we've said before. That sounds pretty terrifying.
Yes, and it will be to the tune of many deaths and team fights.
Quite possibly.
So, as soon as he gets that Death Dance, it's going to be quite hard to remove him from the map.
Want to pull out a little interesting itemization there. You spotting this? Are you spotting this as well?
I spotted a little book. It's got a couple of notes in it.
It does.
It's got a couple of pages in it. but needs to complete the full collection, find that volume of death. The Magi Soul Stealer picked up for the LeBlanc.
Okay, going over the wall is Garyaru. Doesn't quite get a chance to put all that much damage out, though, and the returning gauge is here. That's a good bullet time in response, but it's too late because Corporal's life has already been forfeit. And Unica survives the last auto. Grendel now flashing out. Natsume is here, but CGA are low but not dead. They get a kill and get out thus far. Nap's coming in from behind. Remember what this guy could do. He's got clone, he's got flash. Is looking for it. There is the flash. There's the engage. Remember, it's double Cyclone. Hawkler has got to put up that Lamb's Respite, but Nap is here for the second knockup. There it is, and Arya slays the Kindred again for her, or the 5th death of the game. Natsume trying to find their way out as well. Gango flashing in, but it's into a Renekton. Are you sure about that, buddy? Does go down, and now Grendel's in a 1 versus 2. Garyaru flashing is trying to get onto Arya, and does get it with the chain. That's a shutdown onto the Syndra, and a bloody team fight to boot. I believe that is a 3-for-1 in favor of AXIZ.
And it's just as the Infernal Dragon spawns, that will be the
no jungler though for AXIZ.
The rewards. Natsume with a massive back end of that fight on the Renekton. Gango flashed into the Renekton. That doesn't look so good, but when you look at where he was positioning, he was just trying to get some kind of damage down, kill off the Renekton, get the Triumph through, and hopefully get out alive. Neither him nor Arya get out alive. There was a very timely flash from Arya to flash out of a Distort, but it doesn't stop Garyaru picking up 6 stacks throughout that fight, went from 8 up to 14, has the extra movement speed now. The Magi's is coming along well.
Yeah, let's look at this replayed flight again.
Hook lands. It's a great stun from Arya on the back end of it. It was this kind of double threat of, okay, well, I want to stun the guy jumping in, but also I'll line it up with someone behind them. That's one of the Syndra classics. You try and get multiple people within your sights there, lands it, the hook comes through, and then the fight continues from that point. Nap commits a lot for a one-man Cyclone here. Gango is jumped onto by Garyaru. He's so low at the start of the fight and doesn't have the Bloodthirster. It is worth noting that. Unyan flashes in for the finalizing... final kill onto, final hit rather, onto, so words are so hard, onto the Wukong, and Arya is kind of left alone against the Renekton, who's more than happy to take that 1v1. That's a classy flash from Arya, but the chain finally lands from Garyaru, popping that Sigil of Malice, and pop goes the Syndra.
And pop goes that Death Note as well. 14 pages now, has got a Banshee's Veil, which is good news versus that. Versus the Syndra pop. Nap has got to use his Cyclone there. Clone wasn't enough to get him out. And
that's
a little bit of confidence now being played by Natsume, who's picked himself up a Death Dance as well.
You are more than happy to take that off trade as the Renekton.
Who needs Shojin when you just have perma healing?
You do. So that's Dominus traded for the Cyclone, absolutely in favor of AXIZ, because CJ are continuing to go for these big team fights. They're trying to stack up, use the Spellbinder onto the Syndra.
Didn't use it in the last fight, had it, but just didn't have the stacks.
Didn't have all of the stacks available. Now it's at 100 stacks, so if you come through to this full Syndra combo with an extra, 60 AP on top of that, it hurts. Nasty. It stings.
Yeah. There are a few champions that use Spellbinder really well. Vladimir's up there. Syndra is definitely one of them too.
Oh, get out. Okay, gets out.
Does get out. He's got a Banshee's Veil to play with, and we've talked a little bit about LeBlanc with Banshee's Veil.
I go and watch AXIZ versus Rascal Jester in the regular split. Their second match for the regular split, last split, and you'll see Garyaru build up to Merc Treads and Banshee's Veil on the LeBlanc, and just be absolutely balls to the wall. He'll jump in every time, knowing he has that spell shield available. Jump forward for the huge combos onto someone that can't fight back against him, and get out scot-free. Well, you might have to do it 1v3 right now.
Does have his Veil popped, but that's kind of the deal, right? When you are into a Syndra, a Set, a Wukong...
Dab on the haters.
the Dravens, it's not stand aside, it's the...
It's
just stand aside. I doubted myself. I was right. Yes, play-by-play skills. And, of course, Nautilus with
that's
all the seeds. Thank you. That's really appreciated.
You know what Kindred just got?
Another mark.
Up to 5 now.
5 marks. That extra range increment has been reached at the 4 mark point, and that is a really big deal versus this squad. You do not want to be very close to things like the Syndra, the Wukong, the Draven. Being able to play from a little bit more range sounds like a bit of a breath of fresh air for this Kindred.
Nap walking into Unyan and Corporal Cleanse away. That body blocker of the clone available to block out a hook. Natsume finding himself some free time, some alone time with his bot lane in a turret. I'm going to throw out this question. This might be a little bit controversial. I don't think Unyan had that great a Renekton. I think Natsume's Renekton has been pretty good.
I'm kind of with you.
Does this beg the question? Next time AXIZ want to play something like a Renekton, if they want to get a Hoglet and something like Elise, do you sub Natsume in?
Potentially.
Would you do that?
I think actually Unyan's been pretty solid as a misfortune here as well.
Yeah.
Largely didn't
do
die in
fun.
lane versus what was a pretty nasty lane.
2-0 and 6 has
Yeah.
the 2 crit items.
Yeah,
Doing
yeah.
very well.
Farmed pretty well. Of course, he's down a little bit right now, but I can understand it being a touch tricky when you are trying to group up with your team to not be easy pickings for all of the CC and damage that CJ can bring on. But as I speak plainly,
Oh my word!
Arya, he pops his Spellbinder and nearly caster curses Uinyan for me.
So, no heal used there. The Lantern Shield just enough to save the misfortune there. Had Stopwatch as well, so tools were available. Arya just ticked over to level 16. He very nearly had that rank 3 ultimate. If he had that, that is very much a dead misfortune.
Yes, no other way around.
Because that was a 5-ball ult. You add on some base damage for each orb, for you know, the difference between rank 2 and rank 3. That's a very dead misfortune.
Yeah, she needed to Stopwatch, then it'll be done.
Okay, however, she was not done. No death. That means in 20 seconds we have Soul Point for AXIZ. Infernal Soul Point, not the lesser of the souls. This one's pretty damn important. Hoglet walking
on ward again.
He's on a ward, just about there. He wasn't on there at the start of it. That's why Gretel didn't blind hook into it. Has himself 3 levels now onto Unica. 0-4 is 0-5, unfortunately, for the Kindred, but those levels are not the issue. Natsume's found himself into the bot lane brush.
He's here. He's off vision. The Infernal Drake is up. It's been started by CJ, but AXIZ are here to contest. Keep your eyes on this Renekton. Nap is going back. He's looking to teleport back in. That's the Dominus bot really early. And that's just going to wind out, isn't it, at this point?
It's giving him rage. It's giving him rage.
It's giving him rage. That's important. But we're looking to see whether they can get in. That's a little bit of health bar off AXIZ.
Oh, yeah.
Continues. Arya is doing a lot of damage, but Uinyan has to go golden. He's in trouble now. Gariaru slays the Syndra, though, but it's a return. Gangog is running rampant in this backline. Look how much damage he's done. The Lamb's Respite has been forced out, and there is so much more to be done. Golden goes Hoglet. Grendel's been hooked, but that's not who you want to catch. The Dancer is not enough to save the Kindred from the Wukong. Gariaru is hopping around, but Gango is the man of the moment alongside Wukong. Flash out of Corporal.
Flashes out, and
still here.
Man of the hour, Grendel just taking that fight.
Not done.
And Nap is following on to the remaining 2.
Corporal cannot get away from the Monkey King, and a journey to the west ends with a sunset for both the Wukong and Corporal, and the Infernal Drake is claimed by CGA after a Herculean amount of damage thrown out by that Draven.
The Draven and the Wukong pulling some massive strings in that fight to make sure CJ at least get themselves that second Infernal Dragon. I can honestly say, I love these mid laners. Gariaru now at 20 Magi stacks. Natsume pops the Dominus early, and when he pops the Dominus, you're like, well, you know, that's kind of a bit of a waste. Renekton loves to have rage up there. It means he gets the extra stun duration on his W once it ticks red. He dashes in and he gets right on top of Arya. Gets that ton of damage down. It is a Captain Jack cleanse, but it doesn't stop Gariaru from finishing off with just that distortion over the wall. But it does mean that Gariaru is not dealing damage to Gango, who takes most of the health bar off of Hoglet. He survives. He has that Lamb's Respite, has the Stopwatch too. Natsume forces him off so Hoglet can at least survive until Nap has to commit a flash to him. But after that point, the consistent damage has been backed off from both of these teams. Gango doesn't have lifesteal at this point. He has an Infinity Age in inventory right now, but he couldn't sustain through that fight to really threaten the LeBlanc at the end of it.
Well, let's take a breather. Let's take stock. It is 10-10 in kills. It is 52.3k gold to 53k gold. It is 2 Drakes to 3. It's 3 Drakes to 4. It is ever so slightly an advantage to AXIZ, but
it's about as close as it gets.
Oh, it really is.
Oh my word. That's a 1200 damage crit from Gango, by the way.
Oh man. And he's got double Dirk, he's got
Spell Shield.
A Spell Shield, he's got an Infinity Edge.
He's got a Baron Star.
He can stand and deliver. Gariaru is hopping over the back, and it will be a Baron Star. This could make or break the game. We are 31 minutes into it. CGA back away, though.
They back away, and they force the TP from the Renekton. So we'll see what AXIZ want to do. Spell Shield pop from Gariaru. Cyclone's there.
Gariaru is taking a lot of damage. He's got no flash, remember. Nap can just keep running. The Cyclone is there, and it's stormy weather for the side of AXIZ, who lose their mid laner. Corporal goes down as well from a fantastic stun. The bullet time is good, but it's not enough. And that means that CGA come away with a clean 2-0. Natsume wasn't even there. He's in a bush, but it is desperation time now for AXIZ. Baron's on the table. It's half, no, a third of the health bar for Hoglet. And there is still a lot of damage available for CGA. They start up the Baron.
And I'm loving the way Nap is playing this Wukong. He has no mundos to give, and it will return CGA to the Baron. This time with Nap not there, he had to base though. This is currently a 4v3.
We're going to see a lot of damage going to Natsume, who's just getting dunked into the backline. The shutdown now on to that Renekton. GA will be popped onto the Misfortune, who spends a second alive before a Dark Sphere squishes her into the floor. And that will mean Baron, certainly for CGA.
And this game has just turned on its head onto a single pick onto LeBlanc, found by Nap, found by Arya as well, landing that stun. The Lamb's respite was not enough. The huge shutdown going up to the Wukong as well means he came back with the Death Stance, some of the workings of a Sterak's alongside that Tiamat, and the Baron goes over to CGA. We have our first large gold lead in this game. It's a 3,000 gold lead to CGA. I can do maths. And it means that they buy themselves a free reset. They buy themselves a lot of gold and some items, breakpoints as well. Starak's finished by the Wukong now. And now they will have that overlap of the Baron buff with that Dragon Spawn in the next 1 minute 20.
Well, it looks like the Church of Arya decided it was time for a burning of the vanities. That book has had a lot of its pages torn out. Considered heretical to the Church of Arya, apparently. Down to only 10 stacks. So 10 stacks is the breakpoint for the move speed, which is important. But the move speed wasn't enough to get Gary Aru out. And check out those damage graphs.
You can check out the KDA from Gary Aru.
Holy!
And you can check out the items. You see a Death Cap, you see a Magus, thinking, wow, Gary Aru is doing so well. He's done less than half the damage that Arya has done on this Syndra this game. He has been putting out stun after stun. The optics might not be as fancy, but the Syndra's working out well for CGA.
It is, the Kindred's doing good work as far as a Kindred jungle can go. That's not so bad, but 15k from both the Wukong and the
Speaking of the Kindred.
And Kindred is here, but Nap has potentially gone a little bit deep. Double Cyclone has been popped. That's a decent hook over the wall into Unica to prevent an easy engage. But there comes the Whirling Death. Gary Aru's on the backline, and once again,
that damage
needs the Lantern, but he gets pulled into a showstopper. Unica gets the kill on 2 for that. And now Corporal's in trouble. The Stoneblade is popped.
Oh my god!
And Gango obliterates the Misfortune in the backline. The AXIZ cleaver in twain. And it will be Natsume alone versus Grendel and Arya, and it will be the full ace, and that will be game. They're not going to go back for Infernal Drake. It's 30 seconds on most death timers. GG CGA. This looked good. It looked fun. It was a bit bloody messy, but I would have a CGA game no other way.
Welcome back, CGA. We love to see you here in summer, taking the first game and their first win against AXIZ. So, as we close out game 1 of week 1, we're going to take ourselves a bit of time to collect our thoughts. Come back to you after this break.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the LJL Official Unofficial cast with coverage of this game that we just saw. AXIZ facing off against CGA. Crest Gaming Act reign victorious. Aria has to be feeling good about themselves, bringing off a good start to the dynasty that they probably want to create as one of our MVPs in that mid lane. Gentlemen, that was a strong showing from both of these mid laners, though. Can't not be saying that about Gariadu, though.
It's not often you see a 20-stack Magi's in a pro game. Gariadu was pulling his own weight, of course, with that early double kill onto the bot lane as well.
Helped out.
Gariadu managed to affect the map pretty well. But as the game went on, Syndra became more and more relevant. We saw that near one shot onto the Misfortune. We saw huge amounts of stuns landing. I loved this game from a mid lane perspective.
Really cool to watch. It was back and forth, right? That was even in kills, even in gold, even in turrets, pretty much even in Drakes for
pretty much
what 30 minutes of that game. It was tit for tat, people getting hit at various points. It was inches that was deciding it until it wasn't.
But I mean, it was obvious at some point that one of these teams was going to start pulling that slight edge, and it looked to be AXIZ at the beginning, especially around that first big team fight. I mean, you have to commend a little bit to Natsume. He didn't appear a lot around the map for the first 25 minutes, but the first time he showed up actually got them the win, I guess, to a degree. It was a 3 for 2.
There was that one
3 for 2 in Dragon, so you could take it, right?
Yeah, there was that huge fight around the Wolf Pit as well, where
Gango Flash
committed. Well, Nap committed really hard for Hogler, and Nap had a fantastic game, by the way. Honestly, he'd be my MVP as much as I was looking at the mid laners. But then having Natsume on this Renex and just holding the Syndra accountable, holding the Draven accountable, made this game closer than it could have been. So Natsume, in terms of a debut, you did all right.
Did all right. The other gentleman that was on a debut was the jungler over in Crest Gaming Act. Gentlemen, what do we think about the jungler, whose name has actually escaped me and I feel terrible? Unica. Thank you, gentlemen. What do we think? The former AXIZ sub, may I add?
It's interesting because I think we saw him versus Hoglet go down a lot of CS, lost a lot of early objective control. We saw the Rift Herald and the like get stolen away. But his team fighting was clean in a way that actually Hoglet's was a lot more suspect. We saw the KDA on the Kindred look a bit rough, was getting caught out a lot. And of course, it's not easy to play Kindred versus the amount of CC that's available. But actually, I was very impressed with Set. His way into the backline with the Showstoppers, pairing up with Nap Cyclones, were a nightmare for Gariara and the rest of AXIZ to try and disengage from.
Yeah, multi-man ultimates on Set can be rather difficult, but when you do land them, that's how team fights can be won, and I think Unica landed 2 of them that were at least more than 3 members, which is just, well, we're getting into Nap territory, Appermen territory. Ebby is always a 5-man one, obviously, but rather impressive. I want to touch on this bot lane. Obviously, Gango got a favourite of theirs in that Draven, but we do have to say Earnyan looks surprisingly solid on that Misfortune. Am I right, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think it was helped by the fact that, of course, CJ's comp kind of wanted to engage into them with the Nautilus and with the Wukong as well. And we know that Grendel can kind of overcommit. He has a history of that as well. So if you have someone like this Wukong or the... come on, you know it's true.
I do.
And the Nautilus kind of going in, if they don't save something to get out of the bullet time, the damage really does register. So yeah, Earnyan had a flattering KDA, survived the laning phase. There was that awkward moment with that level 2 flash blown, but not what I was expecting out of Earnyan. This was surprisingly stable.
I mean...
Sorry, go for it.
I mean, we also have to commend the supports. I mean, Corporal definitely saved the bacon on many of the AXIZ members with that Thresh Lantern and also just hooking the correct people in the correct team fights, not just throwing it out immediately like a lot of support mains that we know. But that can be said. Grendel actually had a very, very strong Nautilus game. I was actually very impressed. We've seen a little bit of touch and go on that champion with this support player before.
I used to refer to this guy effectively as the LJL Hachani. Hachani being this older Korean support who would just once or twice a game just randomly die. Just randomly face hits and just walk into a bush and die. We almost saw that again this game, but he had stopwatch, he had flash. Turns out supports nowadays have ways to keep themselves safe. And honestly, Grundle did not feed this game, and it wasn't like the whole kind of, we have sometimes this narrative of, oh, if we're talking about Grundle, it's negative. We didn't have to talk about it much this game, and that's a good sign from me.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. That is a great sign of things to come. And obviously, Crest Gaming out getting that win, starting them off in the right way. AXIZ, this is a little bit of familiar territory for them, sadly, in that first week. They are aware that it can be difficult to pick up the early wins, but they find a way to rally it back and to get more wins, and we'll be able to find out if they can rally it back in this next game, where we're going to be seeing V3 Esports facing off against AXIZ. We're going to be going on a very short break, but we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.